One of the things that you may want to do as you're creating your video presentation is to collect images, maybe images of your desktop or images of websites, and put them into your video presentation. There are several ways to do this. We're going to focus on some of the tools that are built into the computers that you may already own. So if you are on PC, a common way to capture images that exist on your PC is through the print screen method. By print screen, I'm referring to a button that should be present on your computer keyboard that is a print screen button. Sometimes it's a standalone button, sometimes it can be pressed by itself. In this particular case, these are the buttons as they exist on my laptop, and you can see the color coding here as a reference to the modifier key function. So in this case, to use my print screen, I'd have to hold down function, and while that button is down, I would tap the print screen key. Nothing happens when you do that. It doesn't give you any feedback. What it does is it copies the entire desktop to the clipboard behind the scenes. And then to utilize that, you've got to utilize a paste function into another piece of software. By paste function, I'm talking about holding down your control key. And while it's held down, you tap the letter V. Now, you can, again, use print screen by itself. That will take the entirety of your computer screen. Sometimes you don't want to do that. Sometimes you just want to focus on, say, the active window. Maybe you've got a document or you've got a web page up and it's active and it's in the front screen. In that case, you can use another modifier key, the Alt key. Alt and plus print screen will capture whatever the active window is. And again, you can use modifier keys in combination. In my case, since I've got to use the function key to get to print screen at all, if I were going to use the capture active window, I'd have to hold down function and Alt and then tap the print screen. And again, I need a control V or a paste function to see the image, and some common places that I might utilize that would be in Paint, which is a free program that comes with your PC, which is a way to paste and edit images, or maybe directly into something like a document or a PowerPoint presentation. That is one way. Another way on PC is through the snipping tool. If you were to go down and to the left of your PC where you've got your Windows icon, you could type in the word snip and it should call up the snipping tool. If you activate it as an application, this is an example of what the control window looks like. And that gives you a few more controls. It's got a mode, for instance, where you can choose things like whether or not you want to draw out a rectangle or whether you'd rather do some free-form shape. It's also got a delay function, which is useful if you want to call up hidden parts of your screen. So for instance, if I've got to click on something to call up a menu, I can't do a print screen very often to do that because the menu will disappear as I try to do the print screen. So I can delay using the snipping tool up to 5 seconds, move my cursor over, click whatever I want to activate, the screen pops up, the snipping tool activates, and then I can draw out the area that I want to capture with the snipping tool. The snipping tool then gives me a preview. So again, if I've made a mistake, I can see right away whether or not I need to reactivate and try it again. And it gives me an option to save. And in this case, I don't have to paste it into something. I could save it as a file somewhere, say on my desktop or in a folder that I'm using to collect images. That's way number 2 for the PC. The PC also has a third way, which is just a set of shortcut keys. You would hold and keep holding down Shift, hold down the Windows icon button, and then tap the letter S, and that will give you a little reticle crosshair cursor that you can use to draw out an area on the screen and capture just that area. Now, if you're on a Mac instead, you've got some options that are similar to the ones that we just saw. They are shortcut based, but they have similar functions to the print screen or the selection process. So on a Mac, the Command key, which has this little curly Q symbol and is usually right next to your spacebar, you were to press and hold that, press and hold the Shift key, and tap the number 3. That's going to give you a capture of your entire screen. If you were instead to hold the Command key and the Shift key and hit the number 4, that's going to give you a little crosshair reticle that you can use to draw out. And then an extra little thing that you can do when you're seeing the crosshair is you can, if you want, tap the spacebar at that point. The crosshair turns into a little camera icon, and as you drift it over active windows, it will highlight and take a picture of just the window over which you're hovering. Rather than pasting these automatically appear, usually on your desktop, in a PNG format, a portable network graphic format, which is just a kind of a compressed graphic format. It's good for things like computer icons that have the same color over a large area. And then you can open and edit those images in your Photos application on your Mac, much in the same way that you could open the images on your PC in Paint and edit them. Now, whether you're doing this on a PC or a Mac, if you've got a lot of these to do, or if you're working in a group, or if you're working over a long period of time, a really smart thing to do is to name them. Name them something short and meaningful. As I'm doing this series of videos, you can see here that I've got things, I'll eventually be talking about something called Game Bar. I'm going to be talking about how to search your PC to find particular applications like your camera app. And I'm giving these things specific names so that later when I've got to pull them into a presentation or I've got to pull them into a video edit, I don't need to remember where I put them. I'm just going to look up the names. And that is much better than the default names that you would get, which would be things like Capture 1, Capture 2, or things that have a bunch of letters and numbers that don't mean anything. It might be dates that something got captured. Always best to give it a name that the humans will understand. Now, sometimes you want to go beyond just capturing things that are on your screen, right? Obviously, you can call up web browsers and still use this capture method for what's on the web, but you can also download images directly from the web, and many people do this. Search engines are a great way to find and filter images. Google search engine or Bing are two common examples of what you might use. And both of those have tools that will let you use images that you are allowed to use. So whether or not your professor holds you to this standard or not, one of the things that you should be concerned about is copyright, right? And without getting too deeply into it, it is just the right to copy something and put it into something like a presentation. Many people feel that if something is online, that it's in the public domain, and that's not the case. Many people share stuff publicly, but they have retained the exclusive right to copy it. So in this example from Google, you can see that there's a search term here, Valencia College. You can see that there's a filter, images applied, to just find images of Valencia College. And what I would do is open up a tools menu. And in the tools menu, we've got many different things that we can use here to search by, size, primary color, but one of the tools is the usage rights. And you can see here that we've got several here. And what we'd be looking for would be these labeled for reuse, labeled for non-commercial reuse. That would be a common one to use for student projects, right? You're not copying it in order to sell it. You're copying it for, in this case, an educational purpose. And some of the images will try to indicate to you that they are okay to use for that purpose. One of the things that you will see in using that filter and actually clicking on the images, many of them will try to give you the explanation of how you can use the rights. A common one would be that you can use this in whatever way that you want, but you have to give me credit for it, right? You have to attribute it to where you got it. This is an example of a licensing one where someone has created something where they are just declaring it to be in the public domain. And public domain means that it's created where the public can use it in whatever way they want. No attribution or compensation is required. And finally, many of you may already know this one if you are familiar with your phones. You may want to capture images on your mobile device and send those images via text or email to whatever you're using to build your presentation, or to build your presentation on your phone if you happen to be using software on your phone that is a video presentation software. This is slightly different depending on the models, and I'll have a couple of links here. iOS and Android are the two most common operating systems that we would be dealing with. iOS very often is going to be the side button and the volume up. Android very often is going to be the power and volume down, but you really should look at the directions for your specific phone, your specific year. And then those will save to slightly different places, again, based on your phone. Very often on iOS devices, you can find it in a camera roll. On Android devices, you can find it in some sort of files folder or images folder or download folder. I'm going to copy these references down into the YouTube description so that you guys can get to them without actually typing them out. And the last thing I want to do here is just kind of actively go through an example of what I'm talking about. So let me escape out of the presentation and say that I want to add an additional picture to my presentation here. So I'm going to switch. Here we go. Switch into a website, and I'm going to utilize them on a PC. So I'm going to utilize that Shift, Apple, and then Tap S. Screen kind of highlights or grays out, and I've got my crosshair here. And I'll just select part of an image that I want to use, something from the Valencia art site. I would actually not be using this without permission. And I would imagine that I don't, it's not for public domain. Valencia created it, it belongs to Valencia, but for the purposes of this lesson, I'm sure that they're gonna let me get away with it. Let me go ahead and get back over to our video presentation. And the only thing I'm gonna do here is hold down Control and V. There is now my image in my next slide right there. So hope that was helpful. Again, check out the links below for the references on screen capture.